General Hospital spoilers reveal that Willow was no longer the calm and collected person she once was. She was now consumed by an obsession unlike any other. This obsession was not just any fleeting thought, it was the overwhelming and constant presence of Drew Kane in her life. Drew was no longer just a part of her past, he had become a figure that controlled and manipulated every aspect of her reality. Every step Willow took felt like a move within his reach, every decision she made was under his watchful eye, and every time she thought she could escape his influence, she found herself drawn back into his web of control. Her life had become a game, one where Drew held all the cards and Willow was forced to play by his rules. His presence in her life was not just a constant reminder of past mistakes, it was a living, breathing force that weighed down on every part of her existence. Willow struggled to breathe under the pressure, but no matter how much she pushed, Drew's grip tightened. The more she tried to resist him, the more entangled she became, caught in a cycle that she couldn't seem to break free from. The feeling of being trapped, of being unable to control anything in her life, gnawed at her every day. No matter how far she ran, Drew's shadow loomed behind her, always watching, always ready to strike when she least expected it. There were times when Willow thought she might be able to escape, to leave behind the man who had become her personal tormentor, but the power he held over her was insurmountable. It wasn't just about physical control, it was the psychological hold he had on her. Drew was a master manipulator, and every time Willow thought she had outsmarted him, he would find a way to reel her back in. His words, his actions, were calculated to ensure that she would never truly escape. She was always a step behind, always reacting to his moves, always playing catch-up in a game she didn't want to be part of. And yet, despite the suffocating fear and despair that filled her every waking moment, Willow was not ready to give up. She refused to be defined by the control Drew had over her. There had to be a way out, a way to break free from the cage he had built around her. She couldn't just sit back and let him dictate her life any longer. She had to take action, but the question was, how? As her mind raced with thoughts of escape, Willow knew she needed help, someone who could understand the danger Drew posed and help her break free from his grasp. It was then that Curtis Ashford came to mind. Curtis was someone she could trust, someone who had the skills and determination to help her. He wasn't just a friend, he was someone who could see through the lies and manipulation, someone who could help her fight back. Willow knew that Curtis was the key to getting out of this situation, but she also knew that asking for his help meant opening herself up to even more danger. Drew was not the type to take betrayal lightly, and if he found out that Willow was planning to escape, there would be hell to pay. She was playing with fire, but she had no other choice. Curtis had to be her ally, the one person who could guide her through the storm. Her relationship with Curtis began to deepen as they spent more time together, strategizing and planning. He wasn't just a source of support, he was the anchor Willow had been searching for in the storm that was her life. Curtis listened to her, understood her fears, and helped her find the courage to take control of her own destiny. For the first time in a long time, Willow felt like she was no longer alone. With Curtis by her side, she began to see a glimmer of hope. A chance to take back her life from Drew's cruel clutches. But Willow knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Drew wasn't going to just let her go without a fight. He would stop at nothing to keep her under his control, and she would have to be ready for whatever he threw at her. She wasn't prepared to give up yet, though. She would fight. She had to. Every step she took with Curtis was a step toward freedom, but she also knew that the battle was far from over. Drew's obsession with her was deep, and he would do anything to break her spirit. As much as Willow wanted to believe she was free, she knew that true freedom would only come when Drew was no longer in control. She had to make sure that, when the time came, she would be ready to face him head-on. No more running. No more hiding. Drew would have to face the consequences of his actions. Willow's resolve hardened. She was not the same person she had been when Drew first entered her life. She was stronger now, smarter, and more determined than ever before. With Curtis's help, Willow started to gather the strength she needed to stand up to Drew. But every move she made was dangerous. Every word she spoke was a risk. She knew Drew would be watching, waiting for any sign of weakness. But this time, Willow wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. She was done being his puppet. Willow's obsession with escaping Drew was consuming her, but it also gave her the clarity she needed to take back control. She knew she couldn't do it alone, but with Curtis's help, she could finally break free. Drew's grip on her was not as strong as it once was. Every time he tried to pull her back into his web, she fought harder to break free. The more she resisted, the stronger she became. Willow's obsession with gaining her freedom had become her driving force, and nothing would stop her now. The path to freedom was fraught with danger, but Willow had never been more determined to take control of her life. With Curtis by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. Drew had no idea what he was up against. He thought he could control her, but Willow was about to prove him wrong. This was her time, and she was ready to fight for her freedom, no matter what it took. Willow had finally found the leverage she needed, a vital piece of information that could change the entire power dynamic between her and Drew. Curtis, always the sharp investigator, had uncovered something hidden deep within Drew's past, something that Drew would do anything to keep buried. The discovery was a game changer. It was the key to unlocking the door to her freedom, but it was also a dangerous weapon in the war she was about to wage against Drew. For months, Willow had been living in a constant state of fear, controlled by Drew's every move, every word. But now, armed with the truth about Drew's weakness, she saw a way to turn the tables. She had become obsessed, not just with escaping Drew's control, but with taking back everything he had stolen from her. The realization that she could now use Drew's own secrets against him was both exhilarating and terrifying. She wasn't just a victim anymore, she had the power to flip the script. Willow knew this was a delicate game. If she played her cards right, she could finally break free from Drew's hold. But she also knew that any misstep could mean a devastating retaliation. The power she now held was a double-edged sword, but it was her only hope of ever reclaiming her life. The more Willow thought about it, the more she realized that she was no longer the same woman who had once felt powerless in Drew's shadow. She had become someone who could manipulate the situation, someone who could take control of her fate. This knowledge, this secret she now held over Drew, gave her a sense of power that she had never experienced before. It was a dangerous obsession, but it was the only thing driving her forward. Every night, she lay awake, planning her next move, carefully considering how to use Drew's weakness to her advantage. She wasn't just going to run anymore. She wasn't going to hide. This time, she was going to make Drew feel what it was like to be powerless, to be at the mercy of someone else. But Curtis had warned her about the risks. As much as Willow wanted to take this opportunity to get back at Drew, she had to be cautious. Drew was a master manipulator, and he would not go down without a fight. The information Willow now held could destroy Drew, but if she wasn't careful, it could also destroy her. It was a high-stakes game, and every move had to be calculated. One wrong step, and she could end up right back where she started, under Drew's thumb, just another pawn in his twisted game. Despite the danger, Willow couldn't ignore the pull of the power she now had. She had been living in fear for so long, letting Drew control every aspect of her life. But now, for the first time in ages, she felt the possibility of freedom. She could turn the tables on Drew, force him to play by her rules. She could use his darkest secrets to manipulate him, to make him do exactly what she wanted. It was intoxicating, this new sense of control, but it also consumed her. The thought of making Drew squirm, of watching him try to weasel his way out of the trap she had set, became her obsession. It was no longer just about escaping Drew's control. It was about taking him down, about making him pay for everything he had done to her. Willow knew she was playing a dangerous game, but she was willing to risk everything for the chance at freedom. She wasn't going to let Drew keep her locked in a cage any longer. Curtis had given her the key to that cage, and now it was up to her to decide how to use it. She could keep the secret to herself and quietly slip away, or she could confront Drew, reveal everything she knew, and make him beg for mercy. Willow's mind raced with the possibilities, each one more thrilling, and terrifying. Then the last. The more she thought about it, the more certain she became. This was her moment. She had spent too long in Drew's shadow, too long hiding from the truth. Now, she was ready to step into the light, to take control of her own destiny. The knowledge she had gained from Curtis was her weapon, and she would wield it to bring Drew down. But it wasn't just about the power she had over Drew, it was about the power she was reclaiming for herself. For the first time in a long time, Willow was no longer the victim. She was the one with the upper hand, and she was determined to make Drew pay. In the days that followed, Willow became more and more consumed by her obsession. Every moment she spent thinking about how to use Drew's secrets against him only fueled her desire for revenge. It wasn't just about getting back at him, it was about showing him that she was no longer the helpless woman he had once controlled. She had become someone stronger, someone who would fight for her freedom, no matter the cost. But even as she moved closer to making her move, Willow couldn't shake the feeling that Drew was always watching, always lurking in the background, waiting for the right moment to strike. He had always been one step ahead of her, and now, with her newfound power, she had to be even more careful. One wrong move, and Drew could turn the tables on her, using her own secrets against her. But for Willow, there was no turning back. She had come too far to back down now. She would use Drew's weakness against him, and she would do whatever it took to break free from his control. This obsession with power, with revenge, had taken over her mind, and there was no stopping it. Drew had controlled her life for too long. It was time for him to feel what it was like to lose everything. Willow had never felt so consumed by the need to break free from Drew's control. It was as though every thought, every action in her life had been dictated by him for far too long, and the overwhelming weight of that reality had begun to feel suffocating. But now, a dramatic shift was beginning to occur in her mind. She had spent months, if not years, under Drew's influence, terrified of his manipulation, crushed by the weight of his power over her. But now, things were different. Now, she had the leverage. Curtis had uncovered something that Drew had desperately worked to hide, a vulnerability, a dark secret in his past that could unravel everything he had worked to build. The moment Willow learned of it, she felt something shift deep within her. This wasn't just about escaping Drew's control. It was about taking it all away from him, stripping him of the power he had over her and turning the tables once and for all. The more she thought about it, the more empowered she became. She knew Drew's weaknesses, and now, for the first time, it was she who held the power. She wasn't the helpless woman who had been manipulated by Drew's charm and deceit. She wasn't the woman who had been reduced to a pawn in his game. No, she had become something entirely different, someone who could and would use Drew's own secrets against him. The thought of making him feel the same fear and helplessness she had felt for so long filled her with a sense of exhilaration. For the first time, Willow felt she had the upper hand. She wasn't going to sit back and let Drew continue to control her life. She wasn't going to run anymore. She was going to act. But her plan wasn't just about confronting Drew. She knew that wouldn't be enough. If she wanted to ensure that Drew could never hurt her again, she needed to go further. She needed to make him completely powerless, to remove him from her life in a way that would leave him unable to retaliate, unable to control her or anyone else ever again. The idea started to take root in her mind. She could trap Drew, bind him, keep him hidden away where no one would find him. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. Willow could imagine it, Drew, the man who had held such power over her, reduced to nothing but a prisoner. Locked away, his secrets exposed, his strength taken from him. She would be the one calling the shots. But as the plan began to form, Willow felt the weight of the decision. This wasn't just about breaking free from Drew anymore. This was about ensuring that he would never be able to hurt her or anyone else again. She was going to do what she had to do to make sure that Drew's reign of control over her ended once and for all. The realization hit her like a wave. She wasn't just going to escape. She was going to end it. She was going to make sure Drew was gone, taken out of the equation for good. The shock of what she was contemplating rocked her to her core. It wasn't just a simple act of running away, or confronting Drew in an attempt to reason with him. This was the end of him. This was the end of Drew. Willow knew she had crossed a line. There would be no turning back once she went through with it. She would be taking his freedom, his power, and his control away from him completely. She had the information, she had the means, and she was going to use them to take him down. The more she thought about it, the clearer it became that this was the only way forward. Willow wasn't just going to be another woman in Drew's past that he had dominated. She was going to be the one who brought him down. This wasn't just about escaping him, it was about ending the nightmare he had created for her. It was about erasing him from her life entirely, ensuring that he would never again hold power over her or anyone else. The shock of this realization, of what she was willing to do, was overwhelming. Willow had always been the one who lived in the shadows of Drew's influence, always the one who lived in fear. But now, she was the one who had control. She was the one who held the cards. Drew would no longer be able to play his mind games. He would no longer be able to control her, manipulate her, or use her. She would lock him away, somewhere no one could find him, and finally take back everything he had stolen from her. But as she began to make plans, Willow knew the risks. Drew wasn't going to go down without a fight. He wasn't going to give up his power that easily. He would fight back, and Willow had to be ready. This wasn't just about finding a way to trap him. It was about finding a way to make sure he couldn't escape. It was about making sure he was fully silenced. Drew had been the one to control her life for far too long. She had allowed him to dictate her choices, her happiness, her very existence. But not anymore. Willow was done being his puppet. She was done being afraid. She was done being controlled. This was her moment. This was her chance to take back her life. She wasn't going to run anymore. She wasn't going to hide anymore. She was going to end it. End Drew's hold over her, end the lies, and end the torment he had caused her. She was going to do what she had to do. She was going to be the one in charge, the one who controlled her own destiny. Drew had made the mistake of thinking he could break her. But now, it was Willow's turn to break him. It would be her final act of defiance, and it would be the end of him. Drew would no longer have the power. He would no longer have control. Willow had taken back what was hers. Her life, her freedom, her future. And Drew? He would finally understand what it meant to be powerless. The shock of Willow's new obsession, her relentless pursuit of his downfall, would shake him to his core. He had underestimated her, and now, he would pay the price. The final chapter in their twisted game was about to be written, and it would be Willow who held the pen. Curtis had always been a man of resilience, but now, for the first time, he was experiencing the sweet taste of victory. The long battle he had fought against his enemies had finally culminated in a moment that would change everything. He had faced unimaginable odds, fought tooth and nail for what he believed in, and now, with Drew finally out of the picture, Curtis was standing triumphant. The man who had once been a pawn in Drew's game, controlled by secrets and manipulation, was now the victor. Curtis had dismantled Drew's empire, torn apart the web of lies that had ensnared so many, and crushed the very foundation of his enemy's power. It was a win that felt almost surreal, a moment of peace in a world that had been nothing but chaos for so long. But this victory was not just about revenge. It wasn't just about seeing Drew brought to justice or watching the man who had hurt so many crumble beneath the weight of his own deceit. This was about Curtis finally taking control of his own fate. For so long, he had been tied to a world of power struggles and manipulation, but now, in this moment, he stood on top. He had done what many thought impossible. He had defeated Drew, the puppet master who had once controlled so many lives, and in doing so, Curtis had proven something to himself. He was no longer just a spectator in this game. He was a player, and he was playing to win. As Curtis stood there, the weight of his victory sinking in, he couldn't help but feel a rush of adrenaline. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of power, of domination, of finally being in control. The man who had once been overwhelmed by the darkness of the world was now standing tall, basking in the light of his hard-won success. But that victory came at a price, and Curtis was fully aware of the cost. There was no going back now. The victory over Drew wasn't just about breaking free from his grasp, it was a turning point in Curtis's own psyche. The battle had awakened something within him, a new obsession, a new drive to ensure that no one would ever threaten him or those he cared about again. Curtis's mind raced with possibilities. What would he do next? How far would he go to ensure that the world he had just built for himself stayed intact? The questions began to swirl around him, fueling a fire deep inside him that he had never known existed. He wasn't just satisfied with this victory, he was hungry for more. This success had lit a fire in him that he couldn't extinguish. It was a dangerous obsession, a new hunger that threatened to consume him if left unchecked. And in that moment, Curtis realized just how far he was willing to go to keep his newfound power. There would be no more hesitation, no more second-guessing. He would do whatever it took to protect his world, to protect himself, even if it meant becoming something more ruthless, something more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The insanity of his newfound drive hit him like a storm, a wave of madness crashing over him as he processed the magnitude of what he had done. Curtis had not just won, he had obliterated everything that Drew had built, toppled the very foundation of his enemy's empire. The sheer scale of the destruction he had wrought was nothing short of awe-inspiring. What Curtis had done wasn't just a victory, it was a declaration. A declaration that he would never be controlled again. A declaration that anyone who tried to cross him would face the consequences of underestimating him. He wasn't the man he used to be. He wasn't just a good man fighting for the right cause. He had become something else entirely. Something darker. Something unstoppable. The craziness of the situation became more evident as Curtis realized that in destroying Drew, he had ignited something within himself that he could never extinguish. He wasn't just fighting to protect others anymore, he was fighting to protect his own twisted vision of the world. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reshaping everything around him, about making sure that he would always be the one in control. Drew's defeat had opened a door to a darker path that Curtis had never imagined he would walk. And as he looked around at the aftermath of his victory, he realized that this was just the beginning. The war wasn't over. The madness, the obsession with power, had only just begun. Curtis had become the very thing he had once fought against, the kind of man who would do anything to ensure his dominance, no matter the cost. The world had changed for Curtis, and he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. He had conquered his enemy, but now he had to face the reality of what that meant for him. Drew's defeat was not the end of the story, it was just the beginning of a new chapter. One that would be defined by Curtis's relentless pursuit of power and control. His obsession had only just started, and it was clear that there would be no going back. The man who had once been a hero was now a force to be reckoned with, a man driven by a hunger for power that could not be sated. Drew's defeat had given birth to a new monster, one that Curtis could no longer control. And that was the most dangerous thing of all.